Now I tell everyone, they're like, "What is your favorite word?" I'm like, "No." No is my favorite word. It saves me so much time, and it also cuts short all the distractions that can easily distract me. Like, I am, like I said, a full millennial. Like, I love being on all the things. I like looking at all the things, seeing what could help my business help more people and impact more people for the better. So I'm easily distracted all the time. So when someone comes to me with something now, I'm just like, it's going to be a no for now. I need a whole month to think about it, to think about anything big. That's just how we're doing it, because that's also in accordance with my human design energy type. Like, listen, you need a whole month because you are so affected by everything around you at all times and just taking things in. So boundaries are the cornerstone of also everything that I do with my clients, because I'm like, what boundaries do you have in place already? Because you're here, you're getting a little burnt out, you're getting a little fussy about my questions when I'm trying to move things forward. What's going on? What boundaries aren't you holding to yourself to protect yourself and also to further your business? What are we going on here? What's going on?
Welcome to another episode of the Leading to Fulfillment podcast, where everything we talk about is meant to encourage people first leaders, empower individuals to achieve fulfillment, and to help your organizations become places people love to work. I'm your host, James Laws, and I have a great show in store for you. My guest this episode is Kristen Diaz. Kristen is the founder and CEO of Remotely Balanced, where she provides coaching and workshops for high-level women to move away from overwhelm and burnout and towards a lifestyle that provides space to make choices, embody purpose, and create alignment through their day-to-day routines. In my conversation with Kristen, we discuss identifying burnout on your team, learning when and how to delegate, creating a safe to fail environment, and establishing healthy work boundaries. But before we jump into my conversation with Kristen, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the Leading to Fulfillment podcast in your favorite podcast tool, whether that's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple and Google Podcasts. We're pretty much everywhere you can find podcasts. And your subscriptions, and even more so, your reviews on the show help us broaden our audience and get our message out to other people. So I really want to encourage you to leave a review and to subscribe where possible. Now, let's jump into my conversation with Kristen Diaz. Kristen, welcome to the Leading to Fulfillment podcast. I appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you for having me on. I am so excited. I've listened to your podcast quite a while now, so I'm very excited to be on here. So, thank you so much for
Well,
having
I,
me.
I appreciate that very much. We love to have just good conversations around developing people first leaders, finding fulfillment, and being good to the teams that work with us and around us. And you have a lot of experience of working on teams on both sides of the equation. Tell our listeners a little bit about your journey and what brought you to where you are today and what you do today.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I do have both sides of the coin under my belt. So, I am your traditional millennial, everybody. I went to a private four-year college, mounted a lot of student debt, and then thought that I was going to be a CMO by the time I was like 29 years old. And then swiftly at 24, oh my goodness, that has been a minute ago, around 24, 25, I experienced massive burnout to the point where I was having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, insomnia, like all everything just happening to my body all at once within the span of a couple of months. I At the time I was at an advertising agency and I was an account executive, and I was working very long hours. I was doing the most. I was trying to be as social as everybody, but I was also trying to rest, but never seemed to get around to it. I would not take vacation. I'd be nervous the entire time I was on vacation and checking my mail. I was literally the poster child of burnout. It was not great. And after a fun panic attack in my little cubicle, the CEO pulled me in And it's like, listen, you've got some major leadership vibes. I am not sure if a 9 to 5 is for you. And I'm like, I took offense. I was like, what are you talking about? Of course I'm made for a 9 to 5. I'm meant to do this. And it turns out I was not. I absolutely was not. She was absolutely right. Absolutely right. And that's just a wonderful example of a a CEO actually caring about her team. Like, she saw, she noticed, had an honest conversation with me, put me in touch with people to create some part-time work as I figured out what I was gonna do next. 'Cause she's like, "This is not a healthy environment for you. I would love to have you, but I do not think that you're gonna thrive in this position as we both thought." So, it was incredible, that time where I was out on my own and I realized that I could do whatever I wanted. Beforehand, you never think about that. Just like, "Oh, I have to do this job, I have to do a spectacular job in order to get a what, 5% increase every 6 months or something? I don't know. I think that's a lot. I don't remember what the actual percentages were, but I don't remember what they were. It's been a long time, guys.
I mean, if you're getting
But
5% every 6 months, keep that job. That's
right? That
good. That's
actually sounds
good.
pretty good. I forgot. Gu guys, I'm not fantastic with percentages here, but you know what I mean. You're doing the most and
Yeah.
the you're not getting compensated for it, and also you're in a most more than likely unhealthy environment, not just because of office politics or anything, but we have a lot of people who are forcing themselves in these working positions that don't work for them either sometimes. A lot of people have different ways that they work, and when we're forced to be all in an office together, we're all have experiencing our own different kinds of burnout, and we're all trying to figure out how to work within these particular structures, right? So when I had none of that anymore, I got the rest I needed. I felt like I was in bed for 2 weeks, not only because I was freaking out, but also my body was just like, "I need to rest." And when that started happening, I figured out that I missed marketing in certain aspects of operations and setting up processes, SOPs. I'm the organizational kind of girl. I love looking under the hood of a business or my company and just taking a look and fixing and making things more efficient. So when I started networking, kind of just trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, that's when my first business, Val and Vast, was born because I am in my home base is Tampa, Florida. And we have such a strong amount of women entrepreneurs in this city. And as I kept meeting one after the other, just getting insight, see if they needed someone to to give work to freelance to virtual assistants wise, that's when I knew I was like, okay, I can set my own boundaries, have clients, get paid, and do it all completely on my terms and not burn out. This is incredible. Why doesn't everybody do this? I was just like, "What? What?" And so Val and Vast was originally a virtual assistant, geared company towards clients, women entrepreneurs, but then it turned more into project management as that is also my strong suit and something that I did back when I was in corporate and I was in these marketing agencies, and it just snowballed also into productivity coaching. I have this thing about threes. You'll see in a couple minutes too. You're gonna be like, yeah, everything's threes for you. But Valinraz is a couple of things because I just kept noticing that the women behind these businesses, sometimes when I asked them why I was doing something, which is very unusual for a VA, VAs just like go and get it done. I'm just like, wait, but like, what's the bigger picture on this thing? Because I'm so used to being on campaigns and being like, is this the best use of our budget? Is this going to give us the highest amount of brand awareness? Like, what are we doing here? So when I started asking these questions, a lot of women, these entrepreneurs, are just like, you know what? I'm just doing it because I saw someone else do it. I'm like, but does that work for you? Is this the best use of your time? Like, what are you working on right now? What is it? What is going to grow your business to those 6 figures that you want? Let's work on those projects. Let me help break them down for you. So it became a whole reorganization of priorities of how productivity fits. Because I also worked with them on how they spent their time to where, hey, you don't need to wake up at 8. If you're still you need sleep at 8 and you want to start work at 10, that's cool. Do you. And so the whole tagline that I have for Bound Fast is helping you do you, not not just in business but personally. So Bound Fast started becoming very personal because I know what it felt like being in their positions. I mean, I was now an entrepreneur myself, but I also remembered what it felt like in corporate and in these wonderful creative agencies, but still were a heavy office environment. And I can tell when women were getting burnt out. I'm like, why are we getting burnt out? You're starting to not like doing the thing that you set out to do because you loved it so much. Now you don't like it. What is going on? So that's just like my main purpose in life, I think, is just to help people feel so easeful with how they spend their time and with how their energy just matches what they do every day, so they always feel passionate about their business or
Yeah.
where they're at in their careers. And that eventually snowballed into human design, which was another whole other epiphany, guys. It and that happened because I wasn't sure what direction Bound Fast was going. I always felt like I was very close to finding the last puzzle piece that clicked for me, but I never really quite got it. And I was like, it's something about alignment, aligning how you spend your time with your life and with your work. And I was like, yes, work life balance. But I'm like, it's not so much a balance more so as it's working in harmony. Like you say, it's integration. Or on a previous episode, the seesaw example, I found that wonderful.
Yeah.
It's more about that than anything else. And then I found that human design gets into those details. And it's just been such a wonderful journey since helping clients and these women finding their own unique blueprint to their energy and how they're supposed to interact with themselves but interact with others to lead a really unique life according to their own terms. So, yeah, that's the whole journey. It gets so much longer the more you decide to open another business, guys. So I'm sorry for that very long
Yeah,
intro.
I think it's funny. I think it's funny your journey kind of starts, at least your current part of your journey starts with this period of burnout, and then you decide to start multiple businesses, and that seems really smart. No, I'm just not. I understand that completely and entirely. I love the beginning of your story that early on, it seems, we look at organizational culture all over the world today, and you see a lot of burnout is a common thread that is being talked about, and people are being, forced to kind of face that reality of burnout. But a lot of these organizations, it's put on the team members. The leaders in the organization have created a culture that is unfortunately conducive of creating burnout in their team members. And it sounds like in your particular situation, a lot of your burnout was almost, and it's not that there wasn't a cultural element to it, but self-imposed. You had some ideas of what you thought was expected of you and how you thought you were expected to perform, and then you had a leader step in and went, I don't I don't think this is going to work for you. And it wasn't even the culture that they had imposed on you, but you had found yourself that. And I think that's an eye-opening thing as leaders. I My whole goal is to help leaders become people first leaders, and have great empathy for the teams that they lead. And a lot of times it's easier for us to look at our organizations and saying, are we creating burnout? Are we creating elements in our organizations that might cause our team members to burn out? Are we setting expectations that are unrealistic and unhealthy and unproductive for our teams? But as conscientious people first leaders, we also have to be aware of our team members who might be putting that on themselves in a pretty dramatic way. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my first peek into like, oh wow, you really can have a good culture because around that time too, that's when a lot of the focus was obviously on burnout, but also good leadership. Like we were changing the way offices were designed. We were all about there was a big push for like really good, healthy office culture environment. So when she stood up and pulled me aside and then everyone was just so supportive. I was like, "Wow, okay. I'm glad this is the time I burn out and now I want to change my life because this would be the culture that I want to be in." But it didn't work out, but it was a really good example and I still look up to this person today because it really formed into my idea of a leader and how I treat my clients and my team. So it
Yeah.
was absolutely invaluable.
No, it's super powerful, and I am, I I say, congratulations on having that person in your life and that kind of a leader to kind of be that example. Because we all can look back at leaders who we do not want to look back at as an example, or maybe they are an example, but an example of what not to do. And it's nice to actually have a origin story where the leader was actually instrumental in putting you on the right path, not chasing you away from the path that you were on necessarily. And so that's cool. When I think about that, I think also from the leader's perspective, we talk about burnout. It's easy for leaders to get burned out too because we tend to sometimes it's of our own doing as well, self-inflicted. We think we know best. We think we know all the right answers. After all, we started this thing. We were doing this thing when everyone started joining our team, and we find ourselves. And I found myself, years and years ago at that place where I was doing everything. I had my hand in the marketing, I had my hand in the engineering, I had my hand in operations, I was keeping the books, I was doing everything. And yet I had people working in all of these roles, and yet I was actively involved in that. And some of that relates to control, some of that relates to wanting, not wanting to give it up. But how do you evaluate with your experiences, product manager experiences, working as and with VAs, and coming into organizations where they ask you, hey, I have these tasks that I'm looking to offload. How do you know when you look at your team, is that they're ready for you to step away? They're ready for you to take a step back. I know what my answer is to that. I'd love to hear what your experience is in that.
My answer, oof, that's a hard one because I always know what to tell other people to do because that's what I get pulled in for. I'm like, you just have to do it and be ready to take a little more time out of your day to provide constructive feedback if someone does something that is not what you expected, things like that. But I actually just learned to be all hands off. I just let it happen. It's like you delegated it for a reason. Get over yourself. Because the thing is that when you are ready to pass something off to someone, you're ready for it to evolve. So it's not going to be the same thing that you've done. Yes, you created that SOP. It is airtight. But I bet you 10 to 1 whenever that person does it, there's something a little bit off of it. Is it wrong? No. Is it better? Probably, but it's a sign that your business is evolving. Your work is evolving within a team. Like you have to step away and just give it to someone else. Let it, like how Marvel has phases of their movies. You're phase 1, like give it to phase 2 and walk away gracefully like Tony Stark. Like just let it happen. Just let it happen because it will get better. It's just more efficient. The more you're in something when you pass it along to somebody, they're not going to trust you to ever give anything to them. You're going to micromanage them, which is not what we're trying to do in the first place. We don't like those environments. And it also just breeds more control in yourself. It's like we don't have time for that. You got to
Yeah.
focus on the bigger projects that you were meant to be focused on that you're now neglecting because you're so much in everybody's business when you hired them in the first place to take care of that business because you trusted them.
Yeah. I think that's good advice. That's actually pretty close to my generally my answer. And this may not be true for everyone. And you may be, if you're listening to this, you may be a leader who says, when I went into business, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew exactly how to make it all work. But when I went into business, I didn't know what I was doing. I was making it up as I went along. I was making guesses. I was trusting my gut. I was making, calculated risks. And I was going through that process. And I did okay. And at some point, if you have people that you think are being groomed to lead and are passionate, you have to allow them the experience of doing that as well. And so just remembering that, like, I failed, like I made mistakes. I did things that weren't appropriate, like that didn't push my business farther, or even slowed down our ability to grow. And yet I'm still here. So how badly can they mess it up? Especially knowing I'm right there. Like if they need me, if they want my advice, they can get it. There is something to be said as leaders. Like we can be, you think about a stunt person who jumps off of a, 6-story building and falls on that big air mattress, right? Like I didn't have that air mattress when I started the business. I just jumped and I turned out and I landed okay. But I actually can be that air mattress now for the leaders who come behind me and the team that comes behind me. I can be like, you know what? Get up in that building and jump. I'm down here at the bottom to catch you when you fall. We'll learn from the experience and you'll be better for it. But do it. And I think that's great.
I love that. Yeah. It's like you're jumping out of the airplane yourself. You're not sure if the bag's gonna, actually work. You're just like, I have to do this. But every time someone after you is coming along, you're the person that's like in tandem with them. You're not gonna let them fail. And even if they do fail, that's fine. People need to experience failure and be okay with that and learn from it. So, love
I
that.
want to talk a little bit about, as we think about burnout, we think about your story and your transition. I want to talk a little bit about boundaries because it seems that and there are so many levels of this. There is the boundaries that you make with your employers and your managers, and you set boundaries as a team member, and managers have to do the same thing for their teams. They have to set boundaries. But there's also the boundaries that I think that we have to set with ourselves, the boundaries that we have to say what is true about us. And when I think about your story in that stage of reaching burnout, it seems like you came face to face with boundaries that were never set, that you never set for yourself. And I want to know, what are your thoughts on those kind of self boundaries that we set to protect fulfillment and also protect our professional goals that we're reaching for?
Absolutely. Yeah, I had 0 boundaries. I didn't know what boundaries were at the time. I had no clue. I had no clue. I was so focused on the job at hand and pleasing my team and everyone around me that I completely forgot myself, completely. And it's very interesting because in a roundabout way, my specific human design type, I am just open. I am just open. Anybody's energy can influence me at all times. And if I don't put the boundary up to be like, I need to go work in this room for 5 hours, no one even look at the door. I need to decompress, that kind of thing. And I always knew that that was something I needed. But when I'm in an office space, you can't necessarily just go into a room and close the door because that they're like, "What are you doing? You had to be part of this team." So in hindsight, it was another really interesting indicator because I was like, if I had boundaries, I probably would have been fired. I would have been fired immediately.
You would have
But
learned really quick you weren't meant for that kind of job.
I could have saved myself so much time, but it was all so necessary because now I tell everyone, they're like, "What is your favorite word?" I'm like, "No." No is my favorite word. It saves me so much time, and it also like, cuts short all the distractions that can easily distract me, like, I am, like I said, a full millennial, like, I love being on all the things, I like looking at all the things, seeing what could help my business help more people and impact more people for the better, so I'm easily distracted all the time. So when someone comes to me with something now, I'm just like, "It's gonna be a no for now. I need a whole month to think about it, to think about anything big." That's just how we're doing it. because that's also in accordance with my human design energy type. Like, listen, you need a whole month because you are so affected by everything around you at all times and just taking things in. So boundaries are the cornerstone of also everything that I do with my clients because I'm like, what boundaries do you have in place already? Because you're here, you're getting a little burnt out, you're getting a little fussy about my questions when I'm trying to move things forward. What's going on? What boundaries aren't you holding to yourself to protect yourself and also to further your business? What are we going on here? What's going on? So,
Yeah. And when I think about these boundaries, like you're setting as an individual, especially as a part of a team, right? You're setting these boundaries for yourself because you have, you know, we've heard it all the time, right? That the corporate world does not care about you. They don't care about your fulfillment. They don't care about your mental health. In many cases, they are trading time for money, and they're going to get their time, and you're going to get your money, and that is where the relationship ends. But most businesses and businesses like mine are trying to shift and change the dynamic, change the conversation, and think about, okay, how do we work in partnership with our team members? That I want to know, like, my organization has objectives and you have objectives. My organization, as a leader, I want to be fulfilled and you want to be fulfilled. And that's why I want to figure out what brings you fulfillment, what energizes you in your role, and then what do I need as a leader, as an organization, and then how do we align those things so that we are working off the same playbook together. We've crafted it together and working it off together. What are some things that leaders can do to help in that conversation of defining both workplace and personal boundaries that work for everyone, the team as well as the leader in the organization?
mm, I love that question. I think there just needs to be more conversation. I think HR needs to be a little more involved, you know? They're there to facilitate leadership and team, you know? Like let's integrate them more. And what I love most about what I do now with human design is that I I look at how people interact with one another, especially on teams. Like if someone has an open center over here and someone has a closed center here, they're going to interact in a way that they might want explained for themselves so they can learn how to ask each other's ask each other questions, like get through projects together because you know some people can be at each other's throats, especially with leadership and team, but if everyone just knew energetically how everyone's uniquely set up and how they prefer to be interact that's in alignment with themselves, everyone's going to reach their goals much faster. So having more open conversations and being more open about, you know, kind of the taboo subjects, which is spirituality, because human design is very spiritual in a way. So I think integrating more conversations and more feedback from people who want to change the way they work is so important because if there's no conversations on the calendar to be had, the team's going to be a little nervous to speak up. I mean, I know because I was part of one, I led one, like I get it because you don't want to shake the boat, but you have to shake the boat if you want to see a difference. You can't be afraid of what leadership's going to think. If you work with HR really well to create the conversations that need to be had, you're also respecting your boundaries because now you're being seen, welcome, and heard. While we're just so used to just being kind of seen, not really heard at all. So I think it's a combination of leadership being open to hearing all ideas without have making their team feel a certain way about anything that they say, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. That's
No,
kind of
it
like a
does.
roundabout way.
And I think that's a fundamental shift we're seeing. I mean, you're seeing that in the HR space anyway. Over the last several years, they've started to, there's almost been this shift of we're not human resources, we're people operations. We're more about people. We're not just we're not dealing with the resource of humans. We're talking about people and how do we have conversations that lead to growth for everyone involved. And so I see we're definitely seeing that fundamental shift taking place. It certainly is more adopted among small businesses, perhaps, than larger corporations, but even some larger corporations are starting to kind of get the hand. And certainly in today's day and age, with the great resignation and people leaving their companies in droves as they're being called back into offices, and they're like, nah, I'm not having it. Like, I've proven I can do my job and do my job well, not in an office. I'm not coming back. I will go somewhere else. Corporations are being forced, unfortunately, it's a force and not a willingness at times, to change how they think about, how do I interact with our teams, and how are we taking care of our people, and are we taking care of our people, and is that even a value that we hold as a corporation, that like the people in our teams matter. So I love that. I'm a big proponent of having more conversation, creating more clarity, getting more feedback, and really taking it to heart. It's We can't implement every piece of feedback we get as a business, but we can listen, and we can dialogue, and we can show that we heard the people who have these opinions or thoughts or ideas or struggles or challenges. We can show that we are actually listening, hearing, and taking that in feedback, uh, and evaluating it in the decisions that we make, that we're not making our decisions blindly and without heart, without empathy. And so I think that's, yeah, I love having those deeper conversations. Let me ask you this, as we start to round out and start to wrap up our conversation. What would you say is maybe the single piece of advice you might give to a leader who wants to help team members truly embrace who they are at their core and unleash them to be who they are within their organization?
Hmm. I have couple words that came to my head. One of them is environment. Creating an environment that speaks to everyone, because no matter where you're at, your environment affects you, how you work, how you act. So I think creating environments, especially for even if you're working from home, because you have your setup, I've got my setup, we work great in these setups. At the office, we want places that welcome all sorts of kinds of workers. And I think if you create a really great environment, it's gonna help people speak up. It's gonna help people not be afraid to take risks that you want them to take in order to further grow your business, right? So I think it's environment 100% for me. And actually, I just lost my second thought, so I'm gonna stick
Well,
with
that's good
environment.
though. I actually want to talk a little bit about that too. I know that I was kind of wrapping it up as a closing question, but you talk about environment, and there's a lot of books on employee experience and employee engagement, and I remember one book talking about your environment. One of the key pieces of that being your environment. And they were really talking about physical locations. And I'm looking at the world and the landscape of business today, where more and more businesses are transitioning. We transitioned in 2019, right before the pandemic happened. We went fully remote. We got rid of our office. We helped people set up offices in their homes or got them co working space or whatever we could to make that environment work for them. And we went remote. And now I think back, what does it mean to create an environment that is psychologically safe, that is inspiring, and that is helping people be truly their true selves in a digital and remote workspace? What are your thoughts on what does environment mean when we talk about these digital workspaces?
Oof, what does environment mean when we're talking about digital workspaces? It's really just about having a person work in their best way energetically, right? We want to feel aligned with our job, our purpose, our business. But if we don't have the right environment, that passion's going to extinguish. And also, you're probably not going to be as productive. It's the thing. I think it's really important to have conversations with people, especially if they are digital, if they are working remote, asking them what makes them thrive. Because there are a lot of organizations out there where you are working remote, but they're like, please don't be in a coffee shop. Please don't
Mhm.
be this. Like, make sure you're in a conference. Like, it's like, life is happening. And if I thrive in a coffee shop, I'm sorry you're going to hear some people just download a silencer thing. Like, it's not a big deal, but that's something that they can offer. It's like, listen, if you work well by working in cafes, and this is going to be a really radical idea, nobody's going to like this, but I'm like, give me a $50 Starbucks card so at least you know where I'm going to be and you're paying for me to be productive in the environment that I choose. Or for that co-working space, it's like, hey, if you find that you can't work from home, but you also we don't have an office anymore, you can't come to the office, here's a stipend for co-working, like helping people create the environments that they want to work in. Because if you don't have an office, where is all that money going? You can invest it into your people so they can energetically work the way they want to. Because coders, they probably want to be in a cave. Let them work in a cave. That's where they do their best work. Great. Great. I work well in a corner somewhere overlooking everything so I can just see and be inspired and people watch. And that's how I get my most work done. But everyone has a different way they want to. So if they're not physically in an office and it's in a digital space, virtually, wherever, have the company support that. Like, even if it's like, hey, like if a manager sees you working from a not very ergonomic chair, they're like, listen, let's get you one of those. Like, let's help
Yeah.
you work better in these ways so you can feel more productive because there's never a downside of investing in your people because you're listening to how they energetically work. You're listening to how they want their environment to do the best work for you, for their leaders, for the purpose of your entire business, and also what lights them up. And it also includes their schedules too. It's like, hey, you want to take Friday off? Great. Just like make sure you just do this before you go. I don't care when, if you turn it in at midnight, because that environment also affects your time. If you work great in the mornings, wonderful, fabulous. You want to sign up at 3? I don't care. Just get it done. Communicate with me so I don't try to communicate with you when you're not online, things like that. And as I was telling you earlier, it's like people, I think there needs to be more freedom in their schedules. 'Cause I only do calls on Mondays every 2 weeks. I work great Tuesday through Thursday, and Friday I have a half day, so then I can just relax because that's what I need.
Hmm. I think that's spot on. The two words that came to mind as you were talking about that and creating a digital work environment that works for everyone is this idea of flexibility and permission. And what I mean by that is, I'll tell you how we do it at Saturday Drive, which owns Circles and a coffee shop and all these. We have a bunch of different businesses that we own and run and operate. But our policy is simply, I don't care where and when you work. I only care, did we agree on some objectives and did we achieve those objectives? That's all I care about. Nothing else matters to me. I'm not going to keyboard log you and track what you're doing. I don't care about your mouse activity. I don't care what websites you're on. I don't care if you do it in a coffee shop or you do it on the beach. It doesn't matter to me. Work wherever you enjoy it and work when you can be best at your work and then do everything else when you can be best at that. And that is a fundamental belief that we have as a business. I don't ask people to take PTO because they have a doctor's appointment. Just go to your doctor's appointment. Like, I don't care. I don't need to know that. You don't need to put in time for that. I know that I've hired capable, smart, driven people who get their work done and meet their objectives and care about meeting their objectives. I don't care. I just don't care about the rest of that stuff. And I think that that's something that we talk about is you have the flexibility to work when you want to work, which always makes me feel bad because I always like, I'll get a message from somebody on a Saturday and I'm like, you're not working on a Saturday, are you? But then again, no, if you want to work on a Saturday, that's fine. If you did it because you don't work Mondays, I don't care if you don't work days. I don't require it. Our rule of thumb is communication is I don't expect an answer for 24 hours. If I send a message to somebody, I don't expect a response for 24 hours. That gives everyone enough time to respond and I don't have to worry about it. And it actually takes a lot of pressure off of me too, because it makes me plan and prepare. If I need to do work that requires information from other people, well, I plan and I prepare to get that information before I have to start that work so that I don't have to bother people in the moment because I didn't do the preparation I was supposed to do to get my job done. And so it works out really well. So I love that flexibility, permission, and give people the time to work their schedules in a way that makes sense for them. It's solid.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it just breeds trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Kristen, thank you so much. Where can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing if they should want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can visit me at remotelybalanced.com, where I dive deep into all the human design coaching, readings, and also working within your team and seeing how energetically you guys align, get along, interact better, all the fun things. And then if you're interested in Vow and Vast, which is my first business, you can check her out. But currently, she's going through another pivot, the final pivot, which is very exciting. So if you want to stay in the loop there, just sign up for the waitlist there.
Awesome. Kristen, thank you so much. We'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes. Thank you for joining me on Leading to Fulfillment. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Kristen Diaz for joining me on this episode of Leading to Fulfillment. Everything that we mentioned, including a full transcript of the show, is available over on our website, and you can access it anytime by visiting leadingtofulfillment.com/013. That's leadingtofulfillment.com/013. Also on the website, you can subscribe to our newsletter. There we'll let you know when all the new episodes come available, as well as send you original and curated content on leadership, managing teams, and ultimately finding fulfillment. Listen, there has been a growing pandemic over the last few years, and I'm not talking about COVID. More and more people are finding themselves in various states of burnout. Burnout is a persistent feeling of exhaustion, physical, mentally, emotionally, and the inability to cope with daily demands. It's chronic, not acute, meaning it builds slowly and it's hard to break away from. A single mental health day isn't going to cure burnout. It's also important to remember that burnout may not be related to work, right? Some employees become burnout while trying to manage personal responsibilities, such as caring for their children or their elderly parents, managing an illness, or pursuing higher education, right? Regardless, it will affect their health and work. As a leader, you have to be constantly on the lookout for burnout throughout your organization. Someone who's burnout will show long-term fatigue and an overall drop in performance. Burnout can cause even a complete 180 in their personality. And if you notice one of your team members lagging, pay close attention. At its core, burnout is about lacking. It's a depletion of body, mind, and soul. A person suffering from burnout shows a noticeable lack of productivity and progress, concentration, engagement, resiliency, physical stamina, and hope. Now, burnout may be common, but it doesn't have to happen at your organization. Use your one-on-ones to carefully monitor your team members and don't ignore any troubling changes to their performance or behavior. Above all, create the kind of company culture that values them as human beings, including flexibility to manage their responsibilities properly. It takes intention, but it's the only way to create a sustainable, healthy workforce. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me on the next episode. And until then, may your businesses be successful as you lead your teams to fulfillment.